Be patient with me today because it's going to be a long day. But I'm hoping that at the end of it you will see the need for it, because we are today going to look at what is health, how to maintain health, how to restore health. But we're going to do it in a totally different way than we grew up with. Why and how? Well, the information I got from the dustbin of our modern society. Everything that we've thrown away, I've been rummaging through over the last 20, 30 years. I picked out little pieces of puzzle and put them together. But it turned out that we need to start with nature. How is everything structured? It's only when you know how things are structured that you can begin to understand how it functions. And you need to know how it functions before you can actually make up your mind as to what went wrong with it. That's how it goes. So let's just see where that gets us to, right? So, why start with nature? Because it's been there the longest. Now, right from the beginning of our universe, that's nature. Something starts to develop. So, it's been there the longest, and everything is part of nature. Everything is part of that universe. So everything that functions within that universe functions in a particular way. We need to understand that. Well, how can we find out? Let's have a look at these three. These basic three things, far apart in history and far apart as far as philosophies and whatever way of life, looking at life is concerned. But let's start. Let's start with ancient knowledge. There I can see that they say that there is one creative power, and from that one power there are two forces that emerge from that. Together, the three forces. One is the power that opens the whole thing up, and then it can go in two different directions. Together, three forces. Ancient knowledge also tells us that everything comes into a format of seven layers, seven different things. One creative power which they call prana, if I take the old Ayurvedic system, and it can go, there are two forces, one going out, expansion force, which is a yang thing, and a contraction force, which is a yin thing. Okay? These three form the basic three elements, because in the ancient knowledge they talk about elements as a way of trying to explain to people how things are structured. Yeah, elements is a format. Each element has certain characteristics that people can relate to, so it means something to them. The first three, the basic elements, are air, fire and earth. So those are just representatives, as the fire is the basic power behind the creation, and then it can go expanding and gets looser and more airy, airy-fairy, right? And the other side, it gets compacter, watering down into earth. When you have these three, you can combine them together into formats. So you can have a format which is just one of them, which is Vata or Pitta or Kapha, but then you can have combinations. Yeah? And it turns out that there's only 7 ways that you can combine these. Those are the 7 formats of life in the ancient knowledge. Right? So, creation is done by 3 forces: a life force, which results into 2 ways that the life force can go, out or in, and it results in a format of 7. What does the Bible say? The Bible says there is one creator. Right? In the Bible they call it God. You can call it whatever, but it's the creative force. And it leads to 2 other forces. Together they form a trinity. Yeah? And interestingly enough, they say that the whole creation took 7 days. Let's just see. The Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. There's your Trinity. Right? Same way. 7 days. I find this interesting. Because you start off with day 1, heaven and earth created. Day 2, separation of water and land. Day 3, the plants. Day 4, first animals. Day 5, mammals. Day 6, humans. So creation was done in 6 days. No, that's not what it says in the Bible. In the Bible it says 7 days. Because God rested the 7th day. Why would you add that? Unless day 7 was still to come. We've reached day 6, but day 7 exists. It's still to come. Right? Modern science. Modern science says that there is one creative force in the universe which gives results into 2 other main forces. And scientists are very clever people, right? They call one force the strong force, and they call the other one the weak force. These are actually scientific terms, right? So they are clever people, they know what they're talking about. The strong force is what holds everything together. Okay? I'm doing this because it's contracting everything, it's pushing everything together. The weak force is the radiation force. So it covers a large field, almost indefinitely if you like, but it's weak. In other words, it doesn't hold anything together, but it stretches out for a long time, over a large space. So the life force, and again the contraction force and the expansion force. The universe exists of a whole spectrum of energies, and they're divided up into 7s. Have a look at the colors. You know, the rainbow consists of 7 different colors. Different colors. Separated from one another. In sound, 7 different notes. Yeah? Different notes. 7. However, they are organized in octaves, which is a group of 8. So there are 8 notes. No. 7. Because number 8 is the same as the first one, but up an octave. right? So we recognize it as the same note as the first one. It's not a different one, it's the same one. It just sounds slightly different. And also interesting that number 8 is also number 1 in the following octave. So it doubles up. Yeah? It's the end to complete a whole, and it's the beginning of a new whole. But it focuses on the number 7. So, what have we learned with this? We've learned that everything that is created comes from that energy. So also, all matter comes from that energy. It begins with one force, and then it can go either way. It can go contracting inwardly or outwardly. In order to create matter, you need to go inward. Everything needs to densify, push together. And then there come a point in that densification process of your energy that it materializes. You could say that it becomes visible. It becomes a physical reality. But that physical reality only exists because of the energy field that it comes from. Yeah? It is nothing more than an expression of that contracting energy field. There are 7 different layers. Call them frequencies if you like. Yeah? Frequencies meaning how often that we go through a cycle in a set period of time. So high frequency means that it vibrates at a high level, so you have many cycles in a set period of time. Low frequency is much slower. But there are 7 frequencies, and they are different from one another. So I could say that they have a different meaning, like musical notes by musicians are used to express something, a feeling, or same with colors. So 7 different energies, and then they keep repeating themselves in a way that the octaves do. So you have the 7, and then the first one repeats itself, and that closes it off. That is 1 unit, and the next unit starts from there. So it's overlapping. Yeah? That means it's all connected together. You can't separate it. It just is a continuum. So it's a manifestation. Yeah? Different. Each manifestation is different. Each physical manifestation is different. Because it compacts the energy. But when you compact energy, it doesn't all compact in the same way. Think about a balloon. And you press on the balloon and it flops out in different places, and you compress it and you want to compress. So eventually the physical manifestation is just bits of that energy field that becomes hard enough to be noticed. Yeah? And a physical manifestation, for instance, is just an atom. That is the first physical manifestation of anything, because an atom exists. It has form. It has it occupies space. Yeah, and it has meaning. Atoms are different from one another. So these different layers of creation, we know what has been created, that's the universe, and we know happened in 7 days. We now include that last day because it's an important one. Yeah? What does it mean? Creation of heaven and earth. It's a separation between that energy and matter. Heaven is energy, right? Earth is matter. So what is the first matter that is created within the universe? It's clouds of gases. The gas is a physical manifestation of energy. So that's what happened the first day. Then those gases, so as you go through the list from top to bottom, the pressure increases. So it gets more and more compact. Your clouds of gases become more and more compact, compressed. And from that you get fluid. And after fluid you get solids. That's how the stars are born in the universe. They first are fluid before they become hard. Yeah? As the Earth's crust. Inside the Earth it's fluid, but it stays together. The clouds are staying together separate from the rest of, say, the dark space. Yeah? Fluids, solids, and then compression continues. It continues. And what happens to parts of those solids? They transform in a way that these elements are put together differently and life begins. First life is one cell. That one cell contains all the elements that you can find in the rest of Earth, if you like, the materials of Earth. But it's organized in a different way. From that one cell, pressure increases, you get organisms, 2 cells together, 3 cells together. You get fungi, long strings. Eventually you get plants. Yeah? All because the pressure increases. And the more the pressure increases, the plants take up more volume, or the life form takes up more volume. So from 1 cell to 2 cells to multi-cell. Plants come under pressure even more, and the first animals appear. I've categorized those first animals. They have one thing in common, and that is that they lay eggs. In plants, procreation is just spread the seed around. You know, wind, water, the elements will take it everywhere and it will create new life. Here it's contained in one particular form, in an egg, and from there that animal will grow, will be created and grow. Mammals is the next evolution whereby those eggs are not being expelled, but they be kept inside, and so your animal grows inside. Humans are the next generation of creation. We have the same, or a lot of the same characteristics, and we'll see that later, as the mammals, but one of the main differences is that we change from having our belly to the ground to upright, and that changes a lot of things. So the seventh day, I don't know what that's going to look like, because it isn't there yet, but we know it's coming. It's part of the whole system, right? Each of those systems have got different layers. And if we look at the body, and we can do this in plants, in egg-laying animals, in mammals, and in humans, all the same, we find that they're equipped with 7 systems. We're made up of 7 systems. Strange. Those are the systems, right? Just put them down in that order. We'll come to the order later. So we've got a lymphatic system, got a mobility system, a glandular system, circulation system, sensory system. Digestion and breathing is one system, right? In the books it's explained why there is a split, but it basically operates in the same way, right? It's when we call it a feeding system, but it's, and if you look at, take the human anatomy, go and have a look at pictures, right? And flip the structure of our lungs, so the bronchi and the lung tissue, flip it upwards, right, so that it's standing there, and what you then have is a similar sort of picture as a tree, whereby the roots are the digestive system and the canopy of the tree is the leaves and the breathing system of human being. So 7 different layers within each organism, right? All those systems, those 7 systems, are made up from the same, out of the same tissues. Those tissues are in ancient knowledge, in Ayurveda, are described as water, fat, seed, blood, bone, muscle, and nerve tissues. They do the same there as with the elements. These tissues and the names is so that people could recognize them. They've got certain characteristics. Like water is very fluidy, yeah? Runs around and has no real format. Blood, for instance, is thicker water, yeah? And it runs in canals, right? Muscles, different characteristics, and we'll come to those later because they're important. If we then compare that with the ancient knowledge, then we could see, we could try and match them up. The most open, Vata was the air element, yeah, the loose element. So in the physical format, the most loose of these forms is water. Yeah? Our lymphatic system, our water system. Where does life come from? Which was your fire element, which relates to Pitta. Our life form comes from the seed. That's true for us, it's true for an oak tree, it's true for everything. So that's your Pitta. Kapha was the most hard, the most compacted format. What holds it all together? Our bones. What are the rest of the 7 layers that we identified? So Vata Kapha has a solid base, but it's pretty loose. Fat structure is a very organized physical structure, but it allows for a lot of, and it contains a lot of energy. Pitta, Kappa is the blood, it's red. Pitta is fire, is red. And the Kappa element are the cells in the blood. The Vata Pitta is muscle, it's all movement and power. And then the three together, our nerves are the most solid, the most hard element of your physical body. Your nerve is harder than your bone. We don't realize it, but it's something that I've never forgotten from my early days at medical school, when you have the privilege of putting a knife into physical bodies, human bodies, you know, and fiddle around with it and whatever you. And at a particular moment when we had to cut nerves, it just took me by surprise how bloody hard they were, solid. And at the same time, the energy that the nerves and the information and the messages that the nerves are sending out is the most fast way of sending out the message throughout the body. So it's the most powerful Pitta, and it's fast, it's expanding very quickly. So it's got the three elements together, right? The 7 tissues, the 7 systems relating to those tissues. If water is the highest element, we find that in our lymphatic system. If blood is the highest element, we find that in circulation system. If fat is mobility, not muscle, the reason for that is that the fat is driving your mobility. That is where the energy is stored for your mobility. The muscle is your breathing and your digestive system. Have a look in the anatomy books and see that those systems are made up almost entirely of muscles. And yes, there are blood vessels and there are nerve endings, but I mean, when you just look at it, it's muscle. From here to here, it's all a muscular tube. That's all it is, right? And yes, there are some glands on it and so on and so forth, but it's all muscular. So those are the 7, the 7 systems that relate to those 7 tissues. Creation. We know the universe has been created in a particular way, in a particular order. Day 1, day 2, day 3. And in that day, this happened. So, 7 days of creation. Let's see how that relates to 7 tissues and 7 systems. When are they created? In what order? Not when as in on a calendar, but in what order are they created? What comes first, what comes next? So in creation, heaven and earth, which is the lightest element, yeah? Energy was already there, and earth was, as we said, clouds of gases. So that's your water element. Then the separation of water and land, which is, blood is the next step up. Water that is compacted, gets more thick, becomes mucus, becomes plasma. Why? Because there's a lot of elements, a lot of matter, yeah? Molecules in the plasma, in solution, so it's thicker. So that's your next step. We organize the plants. We come out by our feeding mechanism because plants is the first life form were bacteria, one-cellular life forms. They had a need to communicate with their outside world. They needed to get rid of their internal waste, and they had to take on some stuff in order to survive. So there was an exchange of energy between the two. That's your plants. So that's the third step. Muscle and your breathing and digestive system is the third. The fourth step were egg-laying animals. What's the difference between the plants and the animals? Plants are stuck. And they can do this, and they can do that, but they don't go anywhere. Unless you pick up the pot and move it inside the greenhouse. But the plant still stays in the pot, right? The whole thing about the animals was, out, let me go, free. Even the one-cellular organisms, they move about. And we know that, you can see it under the microscope. Yeah? You put a bit of, on this side you put a bit of food for that cell, and on that side you put a bit of toxic material, and you see the cell move away from the toxic material to the food. So there is a recognition of the environment and a freedom to move. So that comes next. That's the next layer. Then we get on to mammals. The big difference between here, those animals, say your insects, but also your birds, egg-laying animals, yeah? Your birds or your crocodiles or whatever. And the mammal is a sensory system. Mammals have developed a much finer sensory system. They rely on their sensory system much more and much more effective to evaluate their outside world. Their outside world becomes much bigger as well, much more intense. And then humans, we think, reason. Mammals don't actually think, right? They respond in an intuitive way, and they may learn a few tricks, but there is no reasoning. Yeah? The dog will know when you're going to feed it, because he knows the routine. He's clever. Yeah, he's watched you, and he's listened, and he smells, and he thinks, that time, I'm not going to be far away. I'm going to be right there. Right? Because of the senses. But the humans start to use their nervous system for reason, for logic. So 7 different layers, and they are created in a particular order. 7 different manifestations in matter, in the physical format. Yeah? Each is made up from the 7 different systems, and each system is made up from 7 different tissues. Which means that human beings are actually created in exactly the same way as the entire universe is. From the same frequencies, the same information, using the same format. There is no chance involved. It's the same everywhere you look. They're just organized in a different way. Yeah? So, think about it. You have a box with Lego blocks. All kinds of Lego blocks. What can you build with it? Anything. You can build Mickey Mouse out of it. You can build houses, you can build roads, you can build cranes, you can build whatever. But they're all built, all made with the same Lego blocks. Different formats. that's what happens. Right? That's the universe. That's the human being. We're part of that. And yes, when you put them together differently, they will function differently, they will have different characteristics. So you recognize it. Just as with the Lego. You go, oh, that's a house. Oh, you build a car. Right? You recognize it. Beyond the Lego block, you recognize the structure that has been made. And then you go, oh, that's what you can use it for. That's how it works. Okay. But it means that we're all made out of the same things. That also means that we're, through those same things, we're connected. As in, if something changes in one of those layers, in one of those 7 frequencies, then that affects everything all across the universe. So the entire universe is constructed in the same way. We're all affected by the same frequencies, the same 7 layers, and they have different meanings. There's different information. That is how we're structured. That is where we come from. After the break, we'll look at the human being in more detail as a structure. Thank you.